Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's have a look at a subject that I've actually covered about a year ago, specifically Xbox emulation. Now, for those of you who have been looking forward to the opportunity to finally be able to play your favorite Xbox games on the PC, well, I do have some good news, because progress has been indeed made in the past year. Now, as I've said in my previous video on the subject matter, there are actually two Xbox emulators in the works right now. One is called CXBX-Reloaded, and the other is known as XQEMU. And as some of you may also recall, I did indeed say that at the time CXBX-Reloaded was the better bet when it came to Xbox emulation, as not only had it made far more significant strides in recent times at that point, but it also featured audio support, which is something that XQEMU at the time severely lacked, which means that sounds wouldn't play. So let's start off by seeing how much progress CXBX-Reloaded has made since I uploaded that video. Well, the good news is that they did indeed get more games running on their little emulator. As one example, the game I'm playing right now, Circus Maximus, actually runs surprisingly well on CXBX-Reloaded. Now, if you've never heard of Circus Maximus before, well, I can't exactly blame you, as it was a relatively obscure game released near the beginning of that particular console generation. And furthermore, it didn't exactly get the best reviews from critics at the time. However, I would argue that this game is in fact quite underrated and quite unique, so it might be worth checking out in my opinion. But then again, of course, your mileage may vary. Another game that seems to run quite well on CXBX-Reloaded happens to be the original Ghost Recon. And while it is of course completely true that the PC version of this game is readily available online, as well as the fact that the other console versions are readily playable through emulation as well, it is still a good thing to mention when discussing how things are heading in the right direction with this emulator. On the other hand, there is still a lot of work to be done with some of the more important games from the original Xbox. For example, MechAssault is still, while technically playable, filled with graphical issues, and audio issues as well. But to end on a high note regarding CXBX-Reloaded, there is another important original Xbox exclusive that is now running on CXBX-Reloaded, and that would be Bloodwake. And while it is of course completely true that it is filled with graphical issues presently, as you can probably tell, it is still worth noting. And the fact of the matter is that I've already been able to play through most of the game on the highest difficulty setting. So it is at least playable, from a technical standpoint anyways. Moving on from CXBX-Reloaded, however, to XQEMU, let's just say that XQEMU has made some very interesting progress in the past year. As not only do they appear to have the performance issues largely fixed that I had mentioned in my last video regarding this issue, they also got an enormous number of games playable on their emulator as well. So naturally you'd assume that XQEMU is my go-to emulator now for the original Xbox. Well, unfortunately that assumption is not yet correct, and there's a few reasons for this. First of all, there's still no audio support in XQEMU, which means that you will not be able to hear any sounds while you're playing your game, which is a huge issue with some of these titles. The second is the fact that XQEMU is easily one of the most convoluted, complicated, and least user-friendly emulators I've ever seen. Now granted, XQEMU is still very much in the experimental phase, so I can understand the fact that it is not exactly user-friendly at this time, and that will likely change in the future. But it is to the point that combining this with the lack of audio at this time means that I can't really recommend XQEMU yet. But that is likely to change in the near future, I would say. So what are my thoughts? Well, for a start, as I've said in my previous video on Xbox emulation, I am very much looking forward to the day that it finally becomes feasible and practical to play most Xbox games on the PC. In fact, I would even go a step further in saying that the original Xbox had an enormous impact on the game industry to this very day. An impact that is sadly overlooked by the fact that the original Xbox itself was so vastly outperformed by the PS2 in terms of sales and popularity. I've actually considered doing a video in depth on why original Xbox emulation is important, because in my opinion it's actually the most underrated console of all time. As a system, I believe it deserves, and for the sake of video game history, needs to be explored in greater depth and more often. And that is of course the importance of why we have these Xbox emulators being made, so we can actually preserve the original Xbox as well as the games that it played. Now when it comes to which emulator you should get so you can play original Xbox games on your PC, well, right now I still have to go with CXBX-Reloaded, but at the same time I would say pay very close attention to XQEMU as well, as it has made considerable progress in the past year, as I've already mentioned. As I'm sure you could probably tell, I'm very curious to see what happens with both of these emulators within the next year. In any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.